everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have my first movie review since I'm doing this soft reboot with the channel and kind of really focusing on just horror and kind of just this whole sitting in front of the camera movie review type of thing. I wanted to start off with a film that I recently watched during October that I wanted to talk about. It's a film I love tremendously. It's not perfect, but I do love it a lot. It's the 1931 adaptation of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Yes, this is my first DVD copy I ever got. I was in a Walmart once upon a time around 2010 or 11, somewhere in that ballpark, and I was walking through with my grandparents who had always talked about Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman. I'd never seen these movies. I'd never heard of them outside of those references to those grandparents, but I had had little toys here and there of Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Creature and the Mummy and so on and so on. And I checked out this movie over there. It was like $5. My grandmother was like, hey, I'll buy it for you. I guarantee you'll probably like it since you've grown up in horror and whatnot. I grew up on Freddy, Jason, Michael, Chucky, Leatherface, Scream, Ghostface, whatever you want to call him, all that stuff. And I finally picked this up with her that day. It was when my grandmother was still alive, and I fell in love with it. It's a great flick, but I didn't watch any more of them for a long time. That's the thing. And I bought this with her, well, she bought it for me. $5, fell in love with it after I watched it. Big, big deal to me. A little bit of a slow movie, but in a good way. In a really good way. There's a lot of great things I have to say about this. This is the exact DVD that I got from her that day. And over the years, as more things came out for the Universal Monsters attempted reboots and whatnot, I would find more things, or I would be given more things. Two of the other ones she got me in 2014 that came out when Dracula Untold, the, at that time, remake of Dracula that came out with Luke Evans. She would give me different box sets or Blu-rays or anything like that. Of course, this is the first one she picked up, which is a Blu-ray of the exact same film, Dracula, just the first one. Pretty cool. Really like it. Good Blu-ray cleanup from what I can tell. And then she also, at the same time, got me the Dracula Untold Legacy thing, which is Dracula Legacy Complete Collection. This actually has every original Universal Monsters flick film that he appeared in. Not just Bela Lugosi, but the character of Dracula. Of course, you start off with the 1931 flick that I'm currently reviewing. You have the 1936 Dracula's Daughter sequel. You have Son of Dracula from 1943, House of Frankenstein, which Dracula appeared in 1944, House of Dracula in 1945, which is, of course, the title character, and then the 1948 Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which I'm pretty sure Dracula is in that movie. I'm pretty confident. If he's in the flick, they've got it in this box set. So still, I don't promise you that all of these films are very appealing or good, but this first film is. It is. And I also bought the re-release a couple of years ago with the exact same box set once you take the slipcover art off, but this is a glow-in-the-dark cover, and I really like that as well. So I bought pretty much every version I could get. I'm not going to buy the big green Legacy collections. I just don't really care about that. As a big collector, I'm not a big collector enough to pick that up too. But I do love this original DVD. I'm glad I have this as well. I don't mind DVD like a lot of other people do. Now, the film is starring Bela Lugosi, the very, very iconic, in my personal opinion, best Dracula to ever exist. The film essentially is about a guy named Renfield, played by Dwight Frye, who has appeared in a bunch of Frankenstein flicks. He appeared in Maltese Falcon. He's in a bunch of stuff. Dwight Frye is a perfect actor. He's so good. He's so good. He shows up as a fellow selling some land to Mr. Count Dracula up on a castle hill. It looks haunted and terrifying. It's a great matte painting, dude. The matte paintings and landscapes and atmosphere and sets and all that stuff are so great here. The castles, the interiors, everything looks so good. Essentially, he goes up in there, and before he goes to meet Count Dracula, he stops in a village when he's being kind of dropped off to get up in a carriage. And all of the villagers are terrified when they ask him where he's going, and he says he's going up to meet Count Dracula. This village knows who he is. They fear him for some reason. Dwight Frye doesn't know why. But Mr. Renfield, Dwight Frye's character, goes ahead and goes up there, and he's kind of noticed some odd supernatural things about, even before he meets Count Dracula, different things like his carriage driver that picks him up halfway up the trip up that hill. The guy just kind of vanishes. You know, there's bats all over the place. One of the things he notices when he meets Dracula himself is that, for example, he comes down a big stairwell, and there's a bunch of cobwebs, and somehow he walks through the cobwebs and doesn't disturb them. Twice, pretty much. It's a very odd situation. And Dwight Frye is a little perturbed by this. He's pretty much held captive after this point, and he finds a very interesting charm in Bela Lugosi's, of course, performance as Dracula himself. He's phenomenal in this movie. He's so eerie with his way he carries himself, but also the way he looks at Dwight Frye and looks at other characters in the film. There's kind of a very dark charm to this guy. I don't know how to explain it. Bela just played it better than anybody could have ever played this character. it works so well. I love it so much. I love it so much. Gary Oldman, you got nothing on my boy Bela. A lot of this film is a little bit of twisting and changing here and there from the traditional Bram Stoker novel. Of course, I'm not a big fan of the Bram Stoker novel. If you talked to me before, you probably heard me mention this. I love the Universal Monsters. I do not like the books they're typically based on. Pretty much. I've never read H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, but Bram Stoker's Dracula is boring. After like the first 80 or 100 pages, it loses all steam in my opinion. It becomes a slow drag. The diary thing does it no favors. It's like a Stephen King novel from the 1800s. I can't stand it. Anyway, I really think that this 1931 adaptation is better than any version of this story, book or otherwise. I just think it is. I think it fits better, it works better, I love it, it's scary, it's fun, it's eerie, it has a great atmosphere. A lot of it eventually evolves into a guy named Jonathan Harker and his love, Mina, kind of dealing with this Count Dracula thing too once he makes his way into Europe or wherever they're at. And Renfield has become kind of the sidekick to Dracula. He gets locked up in an asylum, and he's a nutcase. There's a scene when they first discover Renfield on a boat that is plumb terrifying. It is the thing I remember from this film, and I would think it is the scariest thing I've ever seen in films. It's, to me, scarier than the Nosferatu film, which is also an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It preceded this film. It's a silent movie. Nosferatu is great in the sense of being genuinely scary, for the imagery of Dracula himself, or Count Orlok, if you want to call him that. This film has Renfield, and Renfield is frightening. I mean, he is genuinely scary. Dwight Frye played a role that no one else could play. Not to this day do I think any actor could play that role the way he did. Maybe Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't know. But bruh, Dwight Frye in this movie, he almost steals the show every time he's on the screen. Even if he's on screen with Bela, he steals the scene almost every time. And Jonathan Harker's okay, Mina's okay, all these other characters are okay. I do love the fellow who plays Van Helsing. He's very good. Of course, he is the guy who knows about vampires. He's kind of brought into the situation. He sees things like in a cigar box, doesn't see the reflection of Dracula in that. He starts to suspect that Dracula is a vampire. And the way he and Bela, this actor and Bela, kind of go back and forth, and they're almost hate towards each other, but kind of just their kind of banter is great. I love it. It's fantastic. It's what makes this movie. But Bela kind of pursues Mina. He wants to, you know, suck her blood and whatever. He's a vampire. What do you expect? And of course, there's no gore in this flick, but there's also no music. There's like an opening song and I think an ending song. But most of this film is in silence, almost like a play. And it kind of makes you uncomfortable at times. It can be kind of slow at times, the film itself, so it can be kind of boring too without any music playing. Which is weird to me, because Frankenstein came out the exact same year, like 10 months later, I think, in like November. And it has like way more music to it. Why would the movie industry have changed so much to that point? Maybe it's not a movie industry thing. Maybe it was just Dracula to Frankenstein that Universal decided to do that. But the music works better in Frankenstein. It just fits. I think Frankenstein's a better movie than this. I think Frankenstein's a perfect movie, frankly. But Dracula, that silence that creeps in a lot of the time is a little slow. There's a lot of kind of references to things being a lot more gory than they actually are on screen. Sadly enough, the censorship kind of limits some of the effectiveness of a lot of this. There's some great moments in here, just clearly iconic moments. Like I said, that Renfield moment I referred to is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite horror movie moments of all time. I think it's one of the scariest moments of all time. I think the performances are great amongst Bela, the guy who plays Van Helsing, who I cannot remember his name to save my life, Dwight Frye. All these guys bring so much to this movie. They steal every minute of this like hour and 10 minute long movie. If you haven't seen a black and white horror film, or you haven't seen a Universal Monsters flick, this is a great place to start. I think it'll steal your heart. I think you'll love it. I think it'll be something that'll be worth getting you interested in. It'll make you want to check out more of these movies. Frankenstein's also a great one too. But Frankenstein, in my opinion, is like an art class film. This is like a good monster movie, you know? Very different ideas on the two, in my opinion, for execution. But Dracula's fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you have not seen this classic horror flick, just an absolute classic, you're missing out. It's so good. It's so worth your time. Bela is just iconic here. I wish he had gotten to play Dracula more, and he really didn't. Not in the way I wanted him to. I wish there had been a sequel that would have been even better. Especially the fact that people always look at the book and think the book is better than this. Why? Why? Even so, there's been some decent adaptations of the Dracula novel. I don't love them all, but I love this one. I love this one. It's not perfect, but I do love it. When it comes to the 1931 adaptation of Dracula, if I had to rate this on a 5-star basis, I'd give it like a 4 out of 5 stars. It's so good. It's creepy. It's fun. I wish there was more music in it. It's just, it needs something else, but it's not perfect, but it's not bad in any way, shape, or form. It's really not. The leads, for the most part, aside from Van Helsing, are a little weak, you know? But it's great. I really love it. A lot. It's got some great stuff in it. I really recommend it. Again, to be my first Universal Monsters flick, it's a good one. It's a really impactful one. A really impactful one. For a kid who grew up on Freddy, Jason, and Michael and a lot of other classical horror, this is a big, impactful one. This has a lot of art to it. And the black and white thing really brings a lot to it as well. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Dracula? Did you love this flick? Did you hate this flick? Put your thoughts and comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this movie. I would be surprised if any of you have not seen this movie that watch my channel typically, because I talk a lot about Universal Monsters in my Goosebumps channel and on my horror book channel and whatnot. I talk about a lot of Universal Monster stuff. I just love this stuff. It's so good. The older I've gotten, the more I love it more and more, even more compared to like Freddy and Michael and Jason and Chucky and all these other things I used to grow up on. I have my nostalgia for those things. I have like my teenage nostalgia for these types of things. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below. Thank you for watching. Merry Christmas, by the way. It's coming up. Couple of days away from December, so I figured I'd go ahead and start saying it to people at the grocery store and whatnot. And anyway, God bless you. Goodbye.